Humpnostication Proclamation.
Well, howdy, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Humpnostication Proclamation, powered by the good folks over at Gup's Corner. We are here this week to discuss the Genesis Open at the Riviera Country Club out there in LA, California, and I am happy to be joined this week by a man who was willing to sacrifice himself. He died for our wins. He is FantasyJesus, otherwise known as Axis. What's up, my friend?
What's going on, Hump? Good to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're joining me, friend. Now, you have this great website, FantasyJesus.com, but there's no A's in the fantasy. It's FantasyJesus.com. You got all the strokes gained data there. You got rolling stats. You got it all there, right?
Yes, sir. We got last 5 tournaments, last 10 tournaments. We just added a weighted course history if you're into that. I know it's a big debate every week on Twitter, but figure we jump into that pond a little bit too. So, yeah, it's all free. Go over there, FantasyJesus.com.
All right, man. I know I love going on there and checking it out. There's a good stuff over there. It's always good to look at as much data as you can to make informed decisions. That's Hump's stand on that. Now, let me ask you, man, how'd you get into creating all that fancy website stuff? Because Hump doesn't know how to do that.
It started out, I've always liked gambling, but the site actually started out as kind of a joke. Just the name FantasyJesus. We'd go on Twitter and, you'd find people like, oh, please, Jesus, let my wide receiver get this touchdown. And, it'd be a guy for like the Browns or something. And I'd go on there with some smart ass comment like, God's a little busy with the Patriots if you haven't noticed. Like, and it started like that. And then kind of just mocking touts. But my buddies over at Golf Savages 2 on Twitter, we're also really into gambling, and we started doing all right and figuring out, hey, we like doing this, so let's actually throw it up on a site and maybe try to take it serious. So it's cool. Semi-serious, and yeah, that's kind of just how it started.
I love it, man. I love it. Now, on DK, you're not known as FantasyJesus. You're known as Axis.
Yes.
And you are you're actually in the Woods division of the Gup's Corner Cup, the GC Cup with Hump. How is your team doing? I meant to look it up. I honestly don't know. How you doing?
I don't know where I stand exactly. It's been, I'd say, an average start. I think I've got points in every tournament but the Tournament of Champions, but nothing crazy yet. Been better gambling this year than it has for the DFS side.
All right, man. Well, I'll tell you, Hump started off hot, man. I had like a 7th place finish in the first tournament of the year. And now since then in the GC Cup, I missed like 3 cuts. So it's either all or nothing for me.
Right. Yeah. All it takes is one win, though. Get those 400 points and you'll be right up there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, man. So now we're going to move on into the stuff I call the Humpnostication Proclamation, where what I do is I go out to Fanshare Sports. I check out all the tags over there and I try to figure out, maybe some guys are flying under the radar. Or they're not getting talked up so we can get them at low ownership in the GPP. And I'm not looking for stinky golfers. No, I want guys who can win us some points and win us some money, earn some points. You know what I'm saying? So Absolutely. Are you ready to play the Humpnostication Proclamation? You ready to play?
Yes, sir.
All right, man. So what I like to do is I like to start at the $9,000 and up. I don't, just stay in the 10K and up. It actually looks like when I was going through the tags over there, $10,000 and up this week, it's going to be pretty flat. I don't see any guys really jumping out up there. But when you drop down, you look from $9,000 up. I was very intrigued by Mr. Phil Mickelson. My man's only got 10 tags over there with a 71 sentiment rating, which is not really great. You know what I'm saying? And there's 4 players with 20 or more tags. So he's got half the amount of tags. My man just came off a win. He loves it out in California, wins out there at a crazy clip. Tell me why I should not play Phil.
I mean, I guess is it going to be a letdown week? I guess is the biggest thing. But I mean, Phil's a winner, so at the same time, it's not like he's never won before. So and he's still hungry. So I don't know if the letdown will be as big. What scares me the most about Phil is his off the tee game, which I think I'm going to be weighing pretty heavily this week. And he just hasn't. He's spraying the ball still. So I guess that would be my biggest concern. He's very sporadic, but has the high birdie rate you're looking for, and you're going to need him this week. So it's kind of where I'm at on Phil. He's 29th in the model, but you just got to worry about the letdown, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I will definitely be waiting off the tee, SGOTT, very heavily this week. And I had actually taken Phil 2 weeks ago in the one and done when my man missed the cut at the waist man. And then I found out he's messing with his driver, using some kind of crazy driver there. He went back to the old one. He hit 18 out of 18 fairways for the first time, or not 18 out of 18, but he hit every fairway for the first time in his career last week. So maybe he's turning around. Maybe we'll have to see.
His irons are on fire. So, I mean, if he can even find half the fairways, like you said, I mean, he could be right back up there.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta love Phil. All right, another dude I like. He's got 14 tags, so he's not going completely ignored. But he's a guy I'm always really intrigued by him. He's the X-Man, Xander Schauffele. Now he's played 3 times in 2019. He's got a win, he's got a 25th, and he's got a 10th. So obviously he's playing well. What do you feel? Does he fit this course? Can he compete at Riviera this week?
Xander's always somebody who I just don't seem to get. I picked on him at the Tournament of Champions, and that ended poorly in a lot of head-to-heads. In fact, my biggest one was Gary against him. So to watch Gary squander that on Sunday, and I guess Gary didn't even squander it, but Xander shot the lights out. He's a solid birdie guy. He doesn't make too many mistakes with the bogeys. I guess he's average around the greens with as small as these greens are. If he's missing, I don't know. But Xander's a guy for me who just never seems to be great in the stats, yet there he is at the top of leaderboards, getting wins as a young guy. It's hard for me to really get a pulse on him personally. But if he's going to be low owned, the talent's there and he's a winner. So I definitely wouldn't blame you for going that route in GPPs for sure.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way as you. He definitely doesn't stand out really in any kind of category statistically, but he just kind of seems to always be there, man. So I'm always intrigued by the X-Man. Now let's move down into $8,000 range. Now, I know we talked a little bit off air, and I think we are going to disagreeify on this particular play that I like down at $8,000 range, and that would be Mr. Ches Reavie, who only has 3 tags right now at Fanshare Sports. Tommy Fleetgoat has 21. Now, before you tell me why I'm crazy, let me just tell you, I understand Mr. Ches came to this exact same tournament last year, and he was in fine form, perhaps finer form even now than he is. He came in very hot, and he flopped. But when I'm looking at those numbers, man, the fairways gained, right? We got to hit the fairways this week. His ball striking, his approach, his proximity numbers for both 150 to 175 and 175 to 200. I love them all. He can putt on the POA. Why don't you like Ches?
I don't like him mainly, even if he's finding fairways, his driving distance does worry me. He's got a lower birdie rate than normal, and his short game is pretty ass. So if he's not finding those fairways and he's struggling to hit greens, I don't know how often he'll be getting up and down and making those putts. So that's kind of why I'm off Ches. And at the 8,300 range, there's just a few other guys who I'd even drop down in salary to play this week instead of Ches. Like, I don't know if we were going to talk about him, but I'd rather drop $100 and just play Sergio.
I mean, very, very interesting.
If you're pricing Sergio and Ches at the same, say you're giving me a heads up even on Ches and Sergio, I'd bet Ches, or I'd bet Sergio every week. So,
yeah, I cannot blame you for that. That is a very validified take, and I can understand that. I see where you're coming from. How about another guy up there in the $8,000 range? I love Australian golfers. People know that. Hump loves them. Mr. Mark Leishman. Right now, 7 tags, but he's got a brutal sentiment rating of 40, man. That means more people, the people who talk about him are saying he's going to lose, not win. So he's got 2 top 5s in a win in his last 5 starts. He's playing well. His worst finish was 43rd at the Farmers. What's up with Mark Leishman?
So Mark's kind of like Xander for me. And Mark goes on these streaks. You can go back and look through his finishes, and it's like, a bunch of top 15s, 10s. He'll sneak a win in there, and then it's back to mediocrity. And I always seem to play him when he decides to go back to being a mediocre golfer. And I don't think he is a mediocre golfer, but again, he's not someone that really ever pops in what I'm looking for on DraftKings. And it sounds like I just don't like anybody, but I make a really tight core. I'm a very hit or miss guy, so I'm going big or going home. So if you like course history too, Leishman's not your guy. He really hasn't played any better. In fact, he's played worse at this course than he typically plays. So I think the inconsistency will keep me away from Mark, because like you said, he's not playing poorly right now, but because he goes in these streaks, I'm concerned if I missed his run of good golf right now.
Yeah, it sounds to Hump that Mark Leishman is FantasyJesus Patrick Cantlay to Hunt, because Patrick Cantlay, the dude has missed like maybe 2 cuts in like the last, I don't know, 18 months. And those 2 times Hump played him. And all the other times Hump did not play him. Come on, Patrick Cantlay.
The few times I get on Leishman, it seems to be like that's the week he's going to finish 41st or 70th or 60th. Like it's just, it never works out for me.
All right, man. Let's move into the $7,000 range. I like a lot of guys down here, so I'm gonna fire out some names at you. I'm gonna give you 3 down here, and you tell me what you're thinking. Now, one of them is very, very dangerous because he's liable to have 25 birdies or miss the cut altogether. But he's on fire right now. He played really, really well last week. He's my boy Streels. Kevin Streelman, he's only got 2 tags. Jason Kokrak up top of that category. He's got 20 tags. Streels right now hitting fairways, making birdies, piling up the DK points. I'm a little bit scared of him, though. Should I be okay or should I be scared?
I think in multiple lineups, I think Streelman's fine this week. He's 22nd in my model. What worried me was he really doesn't make a lot of birdies, and he's kind of got a piss poor around the green game as well, but he's been consistent off the tee for a lot of the last year, and even his irons have been pretty consistent. So I think there's enough there at 7,100. I mean, like you said, especially if no one's going to play him, I think he's a fine pivot if other people down there are starting to get pretty popular. And I don't really have a pulse on ownership yet this week. I normally don't look till I'm about to submit the lineups, but Streelman's definitely on my short list of golfers I'd be willing to play this week.
All right, man. I like to hear it. Because I'm always nervous about Mr. Streelman, man. That dude miss a cut or he do beautiful things. I'm hoping for beautiful things this week. Now, another guy down here in that $7,000 range that Hump just loves. I mean, I play him every chance I can. And very rarely has this young man let me down. When I got questions, I always look for the answer. Mr. Abraham, answer 3 tags. He always looks good in my mixed condition model. He's actually 4th overall in my model this week. What do you think about Abe Answer?
So he's great off the tee, which is a big positive here for me. And he actually doesn't make too many bogeys, but the rest of it didn't grade out all that well for me. And I like to mix in the long and the short-term form. So his long-term wasn't nearly as good as his short-term. So you can look at it and be like, all right, well, is he becoming a better golfer? Or is he going to go back to being the golfer he's kind of been? And he's not a good putter, and he's even worse on POA. So he did kind of worry me there, but he's got the off the tee game to pop here if he can find his irons this week.
All right, man. Finally down there in the $7,000 range, Mr. Sun Kang, man. He's got 5 tags. Now, I was looking kind of, course history. I was kind of looking at the ball striking numbers, the tee to green numbers, the DK points over the last 3 years at Riviera, and I kept seeing Sun Kang's name popping up. He's playing okay. Do you have a take on the Kanger?
I'm in on the Kang this week, and it's probably going to bite me in the ass. I'm not normally just like a pure course history guy, but in our weighted course history, he's the top guy in the model. He outperforms his normal play by a large amount at this course, and that's over 12 rounds. So it's not a huge sample, and that's people's issue with course history, but it's golf, so you don't always have the huge samples to go by. But and he putts so much better on POA than any other surface. His irons have been on fire the last, I think it's the last 4 tournaments. Irons have been really dialed in and quite well from 150 to 200, which is why he's done so well here, because off the tees, nothing special. But yeah, I'm going to be riding or dying with Kang this week, and he could really potentially ruin my week.
I hope not, man, because I love me some Kang.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're way down now on the bottom now in the $6,000 range. I mean, there's not going to be really anybody here that's crazy owned, but I'm intrigued by this young fella. He's got 0 tags. Nobody's talking about him. Mr. Hunter Mahan. Now, this dude, he was off. He was injured. He came back. I mean, he hasn't played really tremendous by any means. He's got a couple of missed cuts, and it was like a 30th or a 40th. His OTT numbers, though, even in those times he was missing the cut, they look pretty sharp. Is he worth a flyer down here in the $6,000 range?
So you brought up Mahan, and I went and looked, and he really just didn't do anything for me. The irons aren't good. He's around the green isn't good. I guess the only thing he had going for him was he's a much better putter on POA. He gains almost 1.2 strokes more per POA tournament than on the other surfaces. But I'm not gonna. I think he's kind of a train wreck. So I'll probably. I'd rather go down to Carlos Ortiz and take the higher risk reward there with Carlos's decent course history, and Carlos Ortiz putts dramatically better on POA. It's actually quite insane. I think it was like close to 0.8 strokes per round better. So I think that's where I'll put my eggs in a basket at Carlos Ortiz at 6,300 rather than Mr. Mahan.
Yeah, Hump actually likes Carlos Ortiz, man. That dude can play. Last time I saw him play, he played well. So I'm on board with that. I like that call. That's a good one. But now I need an even bigger call from you. All right. Instead of Hump's hero, we go to my guest pick. And we're going to call this one the Savior of the Week. I don't care about ownership. I don't care about price. I just want to know who you need in your lineups, Fantasy Jesus.
I'm going to go with Rory this week. It was between Rory and JT. I sided with Rory due to the off the tee game, but it's not like JT's shitty off the tee, and his iron game is probably one of the best in the world, especially right now. So it was kind of tough to go away from it, but the stats love Rory too for me, and it's kind of the little extra gut call there on Mr. McIlroy to get it done this week.
Hey, man, I love Rory. So Hump is not going to argue with that. I love Rory every week, but I love him even more this week. Dude is smashing the ball, looks really good off the tee, and he just kind of seems like this is a place where, it just kind of fits Rory. Hump was actually out at this course last year. Me and Mrs. Hump ended up out there. And Hump's not a very goodified golfer, but I tell you, man, that place is scary. I was walking around with JT and Tiger trying to follow them, and man, that course is just deckum hard. I don't want any part of that course. Good Lord.
Yeah, it does seem to fit his game. I mean, like I said, it was really close between him and JT. I don't think he can go wrong, but I'm going to side with Rory. I think he's coming around to a victory here, and with him he's been pretty adamant about taking the PGA more serious this year, and even when he hasn't been playing great, he's top fiving. So if he can get it to kind of click here, I can see him winning by a couple strokes.
All right, man, that's Fantasy Jesus. He's Axis on DK. You can follow him on Twitter at FantasyJesus DFS. He also has the best solo pod this side of Adam Levitan, the Fantasy Jesus podcast. Check that one out. All right, man, I appreciate you joining me. Until next time, folks, you know what to do. Keep your eyes on the prize, your hands up on the wheel, and your deck of bubs a humping.